English like a native. Go to effortlessenglishclub.com. effortlessenglishclub.com. Join my VIP program or any other course. Walk and talk. Welcome. Gonna hear some noise in a second. I'm passing a house. They're doing some construction. They're got some kind of machine going. Can you hear it? Noisy. What's the weather like today in Japan? Let's see. It's another sunny, warm day. At the moment where I am, no breeze, really almost no wind, so it makes it feel warmer. It's another partly cloudy day, but yesterday they had puffy clouds, kind of large. They look like cotton balls, right? Today the clouds are kind of thin and white. I'm sure there's a scientific name for these clouds, but I don't know it. I don't know. I'll just say I don't know. They got long, thin clouds, but lots of blue sky also. Lots of sun. It's feeling pretty warm. Summertime, my favorite time of the year. I like it. I like warm weather. More construction. Another saw. Lots of construction in this neighborhood. I'm just walking through a neighborhood. There's a bunch of little houses I'm walking through. It's near where my big apartment building is. And now, in the city, of course, the houses they're right next to each other. We call these townhouses in America, or condo or townhouse. Condo can be lots of different things, but these are basically what I would call townhouses. So a townhouse is it's like a little small house, kind of like a rectangle again. It's usually they're kind of narrow, so they go up. They have 2 or 3 floors. We'll say stories. 2 or 3 stories. This is a little confusing. The word story, of course, has another meaning, but a story, when you're talking about a building, if you say it has 3 stories, it means it has 3 floors. Of course, in one meaning. So you have to know the situation. So these townhouses here in the city usually have 2 or 3 stories, 2 or 3 floors. So they're kind of narrow, right? Not wide. But they go up. And they're all right next to each other. I mean, sometimes they share a wall, right? So there's no yards, really. They're all just stacked next to each other like little boxes. Which is very much a city kind of living, which I didn't grow up that way. I grew up in typical American suburbs. The suburbs are, just outside of cities. And so you've probably seen it in movies, I'm sure. The typical American suburbs, have a house, and then they always have a yard. You have a front yard and a backyard. So there's always grass. So there was plenty of area for me and my friends to play. We would play American football all the time out in the yards, running between our houses. And, we played kickball sometimes. We were just always outdoors, running around. Lots of green, lots of grass, lots of space, for playing. So I find these kind of city houses a little depressing, honestly. I've adapted. My first really big city I lived in was Bangkok, Thailand. And I liked it. I had a good time in Bangkok. It was 2 years. It was nice, but definitely a big, loud, crowded city. And really, since then, I've been living in cities, because after Bangkok, I lived in San Francisco, which is also a very crowded city. And then, and then here in Japan, Kyoto, Osaka, Honestly, yeah, it's not my favorite. I'm really more of a I like a little bit more countryside generally, but it's just, we live in these cities to sometimes to be near jobs, sometimes to be near family. Obviously, I don't need to do it now for job, but it's more because of family. But I'm thinking that in a few years we'll probably move more out to the countryside because it's okay. City living's okay. There's nice things about living in cities, restaurants and lots of convenience and all of that. But honestly, I miss the trees. I miss the land. I miss rivers. I miss nature. I would very much enjoy getting out farther. As long as I can get a really fast internet connection, then I could live more out in nature. But anyway, we're in Osaka now, so I'll enjoy it. I'll just have to enjoy the city and the city life some more. Right now I'm passing a swimming school. It's a fairly famous swimming school in Japan. It's where my nephew, the bug collector, he goes to this swimming school. He takes classes once a week to learn how to swim. Oh, I'm going to jog. 1 second, I'm going to run. It's a green light. I can cross the big road. 1 second. Run. Don't turn red. I made it. Oh. Go. Got to run a little more. 1 second. Okay, across the big highway. I'm back into the neighborhoods. Let's go. What was I saying? Oh yeah, that's right. My nephew, swimming school. Right, so he goes to the swimming school once a week. Apparently, it's fairly famous because they had some of their students go to the Olympics. So, I guess we have a famous swimming school nearby. Man, more noisy today. What's this? Some big truck machine making noise. This is one of the things I don't like about cities. It's all the noise all the time. Brr, blah, 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 blah. Trucks and cars and machines and all the time. That was the big shock for me in Bangkok. Oh my God. Bangkok is such a noisy city. And it was a big change coming from the south part of the United States, the southeast. Pretty quiet, lots of trees, kind of the hills of Georgia. And moving to Bangkok, it was just, oh my God, it was the noise was the big shock. Now, there are many other things I love about Bangkok, so I have very good memories about Bangkok. The food, the people, it's a colorful, interesting, crazy place, which I very much love. But don't love the noise. the noise, after about 2 years, it started making me a little crazy. But the secret, I think, to living in a city like that is just to get out, to take breaks. So when I was living in Bangkok, about every 3 months, I would take a trip outside the city. So usually go to down to the beaches somewhere. Sometimes go up to the hills in northern Thailand, like Chiang Mai. But many times go down to the beaches and the islands. And, after a good week on the beach, be refreshed, come back to the city. A lot of people do that in Thailand. A lot of people. Thai people do it too. But what we do here in Japan, beaches in Japan are not so great. So what we do instead is we go to the mountains. So we've got some mountains pretty close to us here. Very nice. Lots of temples up in the mountains. We can go. So we're already on the south side of Osaka. And if you continue going south from Osaka on the train, you go into some very beautiful mountains. Really, really nice. One section, it's more east actually, is Nara, which is famous. It's another famous tourist area, Nara. They're famous for, it's the Daibutsu, which means big Buddha. There's a really huge Buddha there and a temple built around it, which is quite famous. Definitely worth seeing. But the other really famous thing about Nara is that they have these deer. Nobody knows why, but for some reason, when was this? At least 100 years ago, I think. A bunch of deer came out of the mountains and came down into the city, and they just started living in the parks, and people started feeding them, and now they just live there. Now they're all over the place. They're all over Nara. So when you walk around, you're going to see deer everywhere, just sitting around. Sometimes they'll follow you. If you can buy these little crackers to feed them, and they'll come up. They can be a little aggressive sometimes, but they'll follow you, and they'll kind of hit you with their nose, and especially if they think you have food. So the deer of Nara are quite famous. A lot of Japanese schools will make school trips to Nara. So you'll see a lot of children in groups, school groups, all running around, and they're all screaming because of the deer. Ah! They're all excited about the deer, and the deer come up to the kids. Some of them are scared of the deer, and they scream and they yell, and it's pretty funny. So that's Nara. But Nara's also has some nice hills around it. But if you really want to go to the mountains from Osaka, you keep going. So you just go directly south along the Nankai train line. Nankai has two lines. We live on one of them. The other line is called the Koya line. Koya. And that's the one you take from Namba Station. So you get to Namba Station, where I'm walking to right now. You get on the Koya line, you take the train south, goes directly south, and you go all the way to the end of the train. That takes you to Wakayama Prefecture. Prefecture just means like state, region. So you're in the mountains at that point. It's a nice train ride, actually. You sit near a window because, the beginning part's city, of course, and then you get into the suburbs a little bit. But then you, somewhere around Kawachi Nagano, which is a town, suddenly you'll start getting into the hills. You'll see bamboo groves, areas of bamboo everywhere. All the mountains, the hills are covered in trees. And then once you pass through Kawachi Nagano, suddenly it becomes like countryside. So you see little rice fields, again, mountains, trees, bamboo. It's very nice, very pretty. And you keep going, you'll get to Hashimoto town, which is really the last town, like decently sized town. And Hashimoto, you change trains. It's really easy. They're used to, a lot of people do this, so they're used to their signs in English, so you don't get confused. It's a quiet, small station, so no worries. It's easy to change the train. So you change over to the train, and then you keep going down the Koya line, and you will get to the bottom of a mountain. I think it's Koya Mountain. I'm not sure if that's the exact Koya Mountain, but it's at the bottom. On top of the mountain is a little town called Koyasan. Koyasan. San means mountain, so Koya, mountain. So the train stops. You have to get off the train at the bottom of the mountain. From the bottom of the mountain, you have two choices. Choice number one, if you have some energy and your bags are light, you can hike to the top of the mountain. It only takes about 20 to 30 minutes. Not bad. So there's a little walking path, and you can walk up. We like to do that a lot when we're traveling light. But if you have like a bigger suitcase, it's not good because the path is a lot of the path's dirt. So if you got heavy bags, or you don't feel like walking up a mountain, then they have this what's it called? It's basically a cable train, right? So it goes, the mountain is very steep. It goes up very suddenly. So a normal train can't do it. So it's just a train that's attached to a cable, right? A metal rope. And it just pulls the train up the side of it. So it's also pretty cool. It's kind of a very nice view because you just going through all the trees. And sometimes you can look down and it drops down quite a bit. So it's like at a 45-degree angle going up. Maybe more. Very steep. So you get off the normal train. Then you have to transfer. And you get onto this little cable train. I can't remember what they call it. It probably has some kind of name. But anyway, you get on that. And then it's just like 5 minutes. 5-10 minutes up the side of the mountain, and then you arrive up in Koyasan, which is a beautiful temple area. So Koyasan is one of my favorite places in Japan, maybe in the world, really. It's a fantastic place. It is basically a temple town. It is a town full of temples, Buddhist temples, and the reason for that is that the town was founded by a monk named Kobodaishi. He's very famous. Japanese people, everybody knows Kobodaishi. So a very famous monk, and he wanted to establish, create his kind of headquarters for his group, his temple, his own Buddhist group. And I could talk a lot about Kobodaishi because he did a lot of famous things, but we'll just focus on Koyasan for now. So anyway, he decided Koyasan, this is the perfect place. It was, at that time, Kyoto was the capital, so it could be reached from Kyoto, although, it took, many days of walking through the mountains to get there. And it was up high on this mountain, so kind of far removed from normal life, so perfect for monks. And, created a temple there, and monks would come, and that's where he would train the monks, teach and train the monks on Koyasan, on the top of Koya Mountain. And then over the years now, that was like over, 1,000 years ago, so over the many years, more temples got built, more monasteries, so more monks would go up there. So it's kind of a Buddhist education area, and there's just temples, lots of little temples, small temples. And when I say temples, they're working temples, so it means they're not just like a temple you go in and you meditate or pray or something, but they're also monks living at these temples. So the temple includes living areas. And one of the nice things about that is you can stay there. You can stay in a temple. And some of the temples are only Japanese language, so maybe a little difficult, but there are several now where they have monks and staff who speak English. So you can make a reservation and you can stay at the temple, the accommodation it's actually attached to the temple. It's a really great experience. It's called a Ryokan. Ryokan. It's a little difficult to say. Ryokan in English. Ryokan. A ryokan is a traditional style. Oh, got baby bikes coming. 1 second. 2 baby bikes. They're talking. Little babies with umbrellas too. Konnichiwa. Cute. Okay. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, ryokans. So ryokan. That was just 2 women going by, 2 moms, and they had their on bikes. They both had the umbrellas with the umbrella holders to keep the sun off of themselves and their babies. And then there's a baby in the front seat of the bicycle. So they were talking and they smiled and said hello to me. Okay, back to ryokans. So a ryokan is a traditional inn, inn, which is like a hotel, right? But traditional style. Traditional style, what does that mean? It means you sleep on the floor. So you go into a room. Your room is basically just, it's just the grass mats, which are called tatami, right? That's the traditional floor. Motorcycle. The traditional grass mat floor is called a tatami. So that's what the ryokans have. So you don't get like a bed like in a modern hotel. You go in there. In fact, you won't see a bed at all when you first check in. Where's the bed? Where do we sleep? You just see the mat. It's kind of very open. There might be a table, a little floor table, and you sit on the floors. There's no chairs really. So you'll sit on the floor, take off your shoes, of course. Sit on the floor. There'll be some tea, usually green tea. So where do you sleep? Well, what happens is that at dinner time, you leave and you go to another room to eat. And while you're eating, the staff will come in and they will move this table to the side and they bring in futons, the thick pads. And they put them out on the floors. And of course they have blankets and little pillows for you. So they'll come in and they get everything. So when you come back from dinner, you come in and all the futons are on the floor, ready to sleep. And the next day in the morning when you go to breakfast, the staff will come in again and they take the futons and they put them away. Now this is how I actually prefer. We sleep on a futon in our home. In our apartment, we have those same tatami mats. It's woven, it's dried grass, and they weave it, meaning they kind of tie it all together. It's very nice. It's firm, but just a little bit soft, which I like. I like to sleep on a firm, kind of mean a little bit hard bed. I don't like soft beds. Can't sleep in a soft bed. And I prefer sleeping on the floor. So that's what we do. Very traditional Japanese style in our apartment. So it's the same in these ryokans. That's how you sleep in a ryokan. So the ryokan is the traditional hotel or guest house, maybe is a better word. And the temples have a ryokan attached to them. So there's the temple which will have like the Buddha statue maybe and all the things for the monks, and then attached to it, or maybe it's part of the same building, they will have a ryokan for people who are visiting, who can stay. Now, what are the other nice things about staying in a ryokan in Koyasan? So one, I like just the experience. It's nice, sleeping on the floor, and it's a very peaceful, nice place. Going up into Koyasan's fantastic, which I'll talk about in a minute, what's out in the town. Let's keep focused on the ryokan for now. The food is fantastic. This may be the best thing about it. The food is fantastic because what you get at most of the temple ryokans have a set full course meal, and a very traditional it's called the shojin ryori, another hard word to say. That RY combination. It's hard for me to say because we don't do it in English really. So shojin ryori, which means shojin food. Ryori means food or cuisine, a type of food. Shojin is talking about traditional monk food. So it's traditional monk food. And all you vegetarians and vegans out there will be happy to know shojin ryori is vegan. So it's traditional monk vegan meals at most of the temples. I'm not sure. Some of them might serve fish or something. I'm not sure now. But the ones we stay at have all been the kind of traditional monk vegan food, which is kind of cool. And even if you're not a vegan, it's worth doing because it tastes fantastic. And this is really old-style, traditional Japanese food. It's really fantastic, old style Japanese food, very traditional. Handmade, meaning it doesn't come out of a box. It's not coming from a can. They're buying all the individual ingredients, and then they are making it themselves. The staff, the chefs, the monks traditionally train to learn how to make this food. So it's really fantastic. It's fantastic. And even if you don't get the shojin ryori, the vegan or vegetarian, there might be other temples that will still have other kinds of very traditional Japanese food meals. One great thing about these meals is that you get a lot of dishes. It's a lot of small dishes. Lots and lots of small dishes. So it's not just one big, like American style more. American style is the opposite, right? So American style, you get a few dishes and they're huge. They're really, really big. Most people, when they go to America, they're shocked by how big all the plates are, the food servings, everything. In America, it's about quantity, the amount, right? Big. Americans like big. But in Japan, with these traditional meals, it's lots and lots of small dishes. And the cool thing about that, well, there are a few cool things about that. Cool thing number one is you get to try a lot of different tastes. So you really get to sample. So if you're into food, if you're kind of we say a foodie is someone who's interested in food, who kind of really likes to try different kinds of food. My friend Joe from Learn Real English, he's a foodie. Loves food. When he travels, food is his main focus. It's all about going to cool restaurants and interesting restaurants and finding different great places to eat. Joe is a foodie. He's a traveling foodie. I'm not so much, but still enjoy it. It's still nice. So if you are a foodie, then this is going to be a great experience for you, because you get to just sample so many different dishes. Some of them just so little tiny little small dishes, and they try to have a wide variety of tastes. So something might be sour, something else is a little more sweet, etc. Really good. Delicious. In Japanese, they say oishii. Oishii means delicious. Oishii, oh. And they'll bring this to you. So as I said, you go to a different room. Again, you sit down on the floor. When you go to traditional Japanese ryokans, you got to get used to sitting on the floor. Some of us modern people are not so used to it. Like Americans don't sit on the floor very much. We sit in chairs, right? But at the ryokans, you're going to sit on the floor to eat also. Sit on the floor, you got a little low table, and then they bring it in. The monks do all the different courses, and I don't know how many dishes. You're probably getting at least 10, 12 or more dishes. Now, of course, another benefit of that is it's healthy. It's healthy because you're getting a wide variety of food. You're getting a lot of different vegetables, getting some fruits. There'll be several tofu dishes if it's the vegan food. Even if it's not vegan meal, you're still probably going to get tofu. Really good. Fantastic. So it's a great experience to have too, to sample. You go to Koyasan and you're thinking, oh, this is a nice kind of monk area, but it's also a great food experience. Now, another thing about staying at the temples is that if you want to, in the next morning, early in the morning, you can get up and join the monks for the chanting and meditation. It's optional. You don't have to do it. But if you want to, you certainly can do it. And it's if you're interested in it, it's a great experience, because it's often the monks doing what they normally do every day, getting up really early sometimes, 5 a.m. or something, so possibly earlier. But I think in Koyasan, where they have temples with tourists staying, they make it a little later, because I think traditionally the monks would get up at like 4 a.m. very early. But it might be more like 5 or 6 a.m. if you want to get up and join the monks. Which, for me, is still quite early. Joe and Kristen, again, my two friends from LearnRealEnglish.com, they went to Koyasan. They visited us in Japan, and we all went to Koyasan, and we stayed there together. So they enjoyed it quite a bit. But Joe hates mornings. He hates getting up early in the morning. So he did go to the meditation with us, but he didn't look happy. He looked like he was half dead. But I liked it. I enjoyed it. Well, speaking of, I'm just walking on this little tiny side street. This is another new street for me. Never been here. Probably going to get lost again. And wow, suddenly there's this cool little temple. This old temple. Interesting. So wooden, dark wood, like a really deep, dark brown color. And they have these dragons. It's like a gate. You know, the traditional gate is called a torii in Japanese. So it's like 3 pieces of wood, right? 2 on the side, 1 across. And the one across has a dragon carved into it. What a cool little discovery. That's interesting. All right. Unfortunately, I have no idea how I got here. So I don't really know where I am. I think I'm still going north. That's the important part. More construction, more noise. 1 second. People fixing the power lines. All right, continuing to walk. So Kristen and Joe visited us in Japan. We had a great time. We went to Kyoto. We went to Koyasan. We went to Shikoku, which is another really interesting trip. I'll have to talk about that another time because that could be a very long discussion. Let's just focus on Koyasan for now. So back to Koyasan. So staying at the temples is really a great experience. Very, very nice. The town itself is also beautiful. Just trees, big, huge trees, and a lot of cedar trees. They're kind of like redwoods, right? Not exactly, but but they're related, I'm sure. So they have that kind of reddish color, and they're big, very big. And they're evergreens, right? Meaning they're always green. And just large. I mean, large, like tall and also wide. And so the whole town it's like a mountain town, and then all in these little areas between the trees, you'll see temple as you walk around. I don't know how many temples, 30, 50 or more. There are a lot of temples there, working temples where you can stay. So how many have we tried? We've probably stayed in 3 different ones. We've been to Koyasan. Well, we've stayed in Koyasan at least 3 times, probably more than that actually, 4 or 5 times. It's pretty close for us. Because, it's from Osaka. It's not far. Especially from South Osaka. But the attraction, one of the main reasons people come to Koyasan, Japanese people, Buddhists especially, is that there is a huge cemetery. It's the cemetery, and then in the back of the cemetery, there is a temple. And the temple, that is where Kobodaishi, his remains, are. So when he died, I believe they cremated him, burned him, and then his ashes are buried there, are kept there at a temple at the back of... Did they cremate him? Maybe they didn't cremate him. They might have buried him. I can't remember. I'm not sure. Usually in Japan, they cremate people. To cremate means to burn a dead body, right? So usually when people die, we either bury them, put them in the ground, or we burn them, which is called cremation is the noun. The verb is to cremate. So I'm not actually sure which one, but anyway, either his body or his ashes are in this back of the cemetery. And so there's a temple there, so many people come there to pray and to meditate and to, give some offering. to Kobodaishi, to respect the memory of Kobodaishi, etc. So that's one of the main reasons people go to Koyasan. But this cemetery is fantastic. A lot of famous people, famous Japanese people are buried or cremated, and they have their remains there at the Koyasan cemetery. Famous samurai, emperors, shoguns, lots and lots of famous guys, and it's really I think the cemetery is beautiful because you walk through, you walk through, you enter it, and you're basically in a forest, right? Just those huge cedar trees, and it's very humid in there, right? So there's little streams and water kind of trickling, and trickling means lightly moving, lightly flowing, all over the different parts of the cemeteries. So there's a lot of moss. Moss is kind of that green, it looks like carpet almost, right? It's kind of very soft and thick. So there's moss on the trees, there's moss on the rocks. And of course, there are all these stone memorials, right? These big stones with the names of the people who died. And many of those have some moss on them. So it's kind of a magical place. You feel like you're kind of with nature spirits or something, the spirit of the forest. It's quite powerful. Oh, big truck coming. If you know Miyazaki, the director, he's pretty famous. You may know of some of his movies. He did the animation movies. So he did, in English, Spirited Away, Totoro. People in Asia probably know him. Maybe others too. Spirited Away, Totoro. What are those other famous ones? Princess Mononoke. Anyway, in his movies, he sometimes he'll have like a scene in a forest, and it's kind of this same kind of forest, the same kind of feeling with all the moss and the green and the big old large trees and some kind of old stone or wooden building that seems like it's part of the forest itself. So it's this cemetery feels like it inspired Miyazaki. I don't know if it did or not, but it has that kind of feeling. So one of my favorite things is just to walk through the town and walk through the cemetery. I enjoy that. It's very nice. That's about all there is to do there. It's not a party town, It's a temple and monk town. So there's no nightlife. You're not going to find any bars, no bars. There are a few little restaurants that aren't too bad. A couple cafes. And then there are some shops that sell, mostly it's kind of Buddhist type of things, like little Buddhas. There's a great incense shop. It's my favorite incense shop. Incense, that's what you light it. It's like a little stick, right? You light it, and then it smokes, and the smoke smells really good, right? So Japanese incense, I'd say, India is famous for incense, of course. A lot of incense is made in India, and it's fantastic too. Japanese incense is different than Indian incense. The types of smells, I guess is the word. The types of smells used in the Japanese incense is, I don't know, like a little more like pine, evergreen. It makes sense, right? Because they're probably using woods and smells and plant material from Japan. And so the incense, therefore, has a little bit more of the smell of the Japanese mountains. Or in India, they're using more of the plants and spices of India, which will give Indian incense more of the smell of India. They're both great, but since I'm living in Japan now and I've gone to Koyasan, I always buy like a box of incense because I just love it. It smells so good. Sometimes I just burn it for fun, just because it smells great. So if you like incense, check it out. It's right there's basically just one major road. Well, two roads, two major roads in Koyasan. It's pretty hard to get lost there. It's so small. So you walk along the main road that goes to the cemetery. So one road goes to the little train station, the cable train, and then it comes and it hits the main crossroad, and the main crossroad goes to the cemetery. That's basically it. That's all. So you can walk on that main street, and there's the incense shop is there. As I said, a few restaurants. Nothing too special about the restaurants. There's one vegetarian restaurant that's pretty nice, if you're a vegetarian. So that's Koyasan. Highly recommend it. It's a different kind of experience in Japan than just the normal kind of sightseeing in the big cities. I like it too because, as I was talking about yesterday with Kyoto. So Kyoto has some also beautiful temples. But the problem is that the sort of the feeling of the temples, right? They were designed to have a certain feeling. The Zen, many of them are, designed to have what you might call a Zen feeling, to create a kind of Zen feeling, which is a kind of to quiet your mind, peaceful, tranquil, these kind of words. The problem is, if you put hundreds of people, tourists who are loud and taking pictures constantly, it kind of destroys the whole Zen feeling. It's no longer quiet. It's no longer peaceful. Now it feels busy. And so this is what I don't like about the crowded, famous temples in Kyoto. They're beautiful for sure. There's the Gold Temple, the Silver Temple, Fushimi Inari. These are just the names of some of the big famous temples. But they're so famous that they're usually crowded full of people. And at least for me, it somehow kills the feeling a bit. Right? It's kind of like, well, oh, I just realized I might be lost. I think I just found that arcade street again, but I'm going the wrong way. Which way do I turn? This is a different arcade. Where am I? I think this is a different one. Meat Shop Sakai. I hope I'm not in Sakai, because that's the exact opposite direction. That's more south. I'm going to have a really long walk if that's Sakai. Okay, I'm going to see if I can try to find a main road. I think I'm lost. Yeah, where am I? I have no idea where I am now. And now I've lost my direction because I don't see any of the large buildings. Oh, that's where I am. Oh. Okay, I just saw. Never mind. So I was kind of going the wrong way. Interesting. I'm glad I realized it. All right, I think I'm heading north again. Good. I know where I am now. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, the tourism in Kyoto. So, here's my tip. If you visit Kyoto for sure. If you come to Japan, Kyoto is worth visiting. It's so, despite what I'm saying about the crowds and stuff, it's a cool place. It's fantastic. The temples are great. But try to go to the famous places very early or very late. If you go in the middle of the day, they will be full of people. Like my favorite temple in Kyoto, of the famous ones, is the Silver Temple. Genkakuji is called in Japanese, which is up in the northeast part of Kyoto. It's not big. It's the reason I like it is it's a Zen temple. It has a Zen garden, one of the stone garden with the sand and the stones. It's small. It's not the gold temple. Another famous one is gold, covered in gold, and it's very bright and bigger, and it's sort of more obvious, right? It's very strong, powerful view, whereas the Silver Temple is more subtle. Subtle means you have to notice it. So what's great about the Silver Temple is that Zen feeling, that sort of peacefulness. So to enjoy the Silver Temple, I think you need to go when it's quiet. I mean, really, to appreciate it. It's a better experience if you do it when it's quiet. So the time I like to go to the Silver Temple in Kyoto is right near sunset. So right before it closes. I think it's 5. Is it 5 o'clock it closes? So summer, sunsets later. The closing time may change, actually, according to when the sun goes down. You have to check if you visit. But go, maybe 30 minutes before it closes. You're more likely to have a fewer number of people. It's more likely to be quiet. It's more likely then to have that peaceful, more Zen feeling. It's got a great little garden, Zen garden. So there's the stone garden, and then there's also just a garden with trees and these little bonsais, and very, very nice. But best enjoyed when when it's peaceful and quiet, and there are not too many people. Koyasan, the reason I like Koyasan is because it's like that all the time. It's always peaceful and quiet. It's not near a city, it's kind of out, quite far from the city. So it doesn't get the huge crowds. It's not the same. And it's very much a religious town. So that's all there is. Temples, the cemetery, and the Kobayashi temple. So I think it's good. For me, that's good because it keeps away the crowds. It's nice to have a place that keeps the spirit. It's still a working place. It's still very much focused on the monks and the monasteries and the temples. So if you do come to Osaka and you have the time, and if that sounds interesting to you, I recommend it. Speaking of monks, monks live a very simple life. Simple, simple, simple. And that was the topic of my Effortless English show yesterday. Basically, I talked about baseline, right? We're talking about financial freedom. Financial freedom. In the modern world, financial freedom. And as I said, and I've said many times, my view is a little different. A lot of the people, I follow a lot of entrepreneurs, I follow a lot of the financial gurus, teachers, rich people on social media, or I read their books, and they have good stuff. They can teach you how to make money, for sure. These guys have made money. They have become rich. So they know about that. They know how to do that. They know how to make lots of money. But I feel like they're missing something. I feel like they're missing something for a couple reasons, practically and also just spiritually. I think they're missing something, and my approach is very different. Certainly, increasing your income. The very obvious way to have financial freedom. The simple, obvious thing is you need to make more money and spend less money. The combination's the best. If you can increase your income and cut your expenses, well, then you're going to have a lot of extra money. What do you do with that extra money? Well, you invest it, you start a business, you save it, whatever. That's what buys you financial freedom. That's how you do it. That's the simple formula. Simple but not easy. Right? There's a difference between simple, which is the opposite of complicated, simple, and easy, which is the opposite of difficult. Right? So something can be both simple and difficult. So for example, lifting 500 kilograms. We'll just say deadlift 500 kilograms. I think that's near the world record. It's simple. There's nothing complicated. Bend down, grab the bar, and pick it up. Right? Very simple. However, obviously not easy. Obviously, for most of us, almost impossible. Probably is impossible for a lot of us. We just don't have the genetics to lift that kind of weight. So something can be simple but difficult. And, making lots of money and getting rich is one of those things. It's pretty simple. We're going to see in the Robert Kiyosaki book as we go. It's pretty simple ideas, clear ideas, very good ideas. However, not always easy, right? There are a lot of things, other things you have to learn. There are a lot of skills. You have to overcome your fear, which is a big one. So, for most people, they focus on that. I got to get rich. I got to make $1 million or millions of dollars. And that takes time. For most people, unless you get really lucky, that takes time. And I had this exact same challenge and problem when I was younger. I wanted financial freedom. I hated working, as I've said many times. I was just tired of it. I wanted to be free. And I thought about this problem all the time. What can I do? First I thought I could just find a better job that I would like more, but eventually I realized, I'm near a highway, so pretty loud traffic now. I realized that I just didn't like jobs in general, and I wanted to escape. And I needed to make enough money independently to be financially free. But I didn't know how to do it for many years. How do I do it? What do I do? I don't know. And then I was afraid to try, and then I tried something and it failed. And so I kept thinking this problem, and I sort of realized, okay, well, there's two sides to the equation, right? Make more money or cut expenses. So instead of trying to focus on making more money like I changed my focus. I said, okay, making money, I'm having some problems with this. I thought at that time, maybe I'm not good at making money, right? Maybe that's just not me. So I thought, let's change. Let's focus on the other side. Cutting expenses, living more simply. I already liked living simply. I was already living fairly simply, not spending a lot of money. And I thought, well, maybe this is something I'm already pretty good at, living simply, and let's see how simply can I do it. How far can I go on this side? How low can I cut my expenses? How cheaply can I live? And then I began these experiments of cutting my expenses. I started looking at my checkbook. At that time, I had a checkbook. We wrote checks. And I was just looking at every expense, everything from the last several months. And I'd say, okay, I spent money here. Do I need this? I would ask myself. And many times I'd say, no, I think I don't need that. Oh, traffic again. Loud. So I would identify something I didn't need, and I would cut it. I'd say, okay, I'm not going to spend money on that anymore. And then I would just go through and I would circle everything that I could eliminate. All the expenses. And of course, there were many that I thought, oh, no, I need that. My apartment, for example. For a long time, I thought, I have to live in an apartment, of course. But it's a process. It's hard for most people to just cut everything down to the baseline immediately. Usually you cut, and then you kind of wait, and you see how it is, and you realize you're okay. You realize, oh, this isn't bad. Then a couple months later, you think, well, maybe I could cut more. Can I cut more? So you look at your expenses again, and then you find a couple more things. Oh, I could cut that. I could reduce that. So you cut a little bit more. You reduce more. A few months later, you do it again. And again, and again, and again. And this is the process I went through. This is what I did to find my own baseline, which is what I talked about in yesterday's show. Finding your baseline. And I kept going and I kept going until, as I said yesterday, I was living in my car. I got all the way down to living in my car. Now, what I didn't mention yesterday, but maybe I should mention, I think one reason I was confident to try this, of course, I read the book Walden by Henry Thoreau. That inspired me, as I mentioned in the show. But one reason I was not afraid is because at that time in my life, I used to go camping a lot. I really like camping and hiking. And I was living in Georgia, Athens, Georgia, which is kind of in the hills of Georgia, near the mountains. So very often, I would get my tent, get my backpack, get my dog, and we would drive up to the mountains. Usually we would drive to the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail is a very famous mountain trail in the United States. So I would drive up somewhere that connected to the Appalachian Trail, park my car, put on my backpack, and then my dog and I would walk into the mountains. And I had a favorite spot, so we would drive up. It's out in the mountains, so it's on a highway. And then there was this little small area where I could park the car, and then, the trail came out of the woods into the parking lot, and then it crossed the street, and then it continued. The Appalachian Trail goes, 2,000 miles, I think it is. So it goes from Georgia to Maine. To walk it probably takes 4 to 6 months for most people. So it's very long. So there's a section in Georgia that I would always go to, put on my backpack, and then my dog, and we'd walk, and then we'd climb. From the parking lot, we'd have to climb. So it's this, going back and forth, climbing up the mountains. There's always these streams. It's very green mountains, the Appalachian Trail. They're old mountains. Some people might call them big hills. But they're old, small mountains, covered in green, covered in trees. So we would hike up. Going up, usually on the first night, I would hike up probably about 2 hours. I would walk into the mountains about 2 hours till I would get to the top of a ridge. A ridge is kind of the top of a mountain area that's fairly flat. So there was a ridge about 2 hours from the highway. And of course, this is in the mountains. There are no roads, no buildings, nothing. Wilderness. So I had to carry everything. Tent, food, water, everything. Everything you want, you have to carry. So my dog and I would go up there, had to carry dog food. We got up there, and then I'd find a nice spot, usually with this beautiful view out over the valley. I could see like a town in the far distance with the lights at night. I would set up my tent, get my little cooking stove, cook some food, feed my dog, and then just look at the stars. It was perfectly quiet. Perfect silence, except the only noise would be, the wind in the trees and the leaves. I miss that. I miss the Georgia mountains, I have to say. Especially right now as all the noise in the city and thinking about that memory. So peaceful. Now, a cool thing about my dog, and she was cool, I have to say. She was one cool doggy. She would guard me at night. So what would happen is, the pattern, whenever we went camping or hiking, is that when we would get to the camp, right? We would get to a campsite, which just means a flat area, and then I would say, okay, I'm going to put the tent here. I'd put my backpack down to start taking out the tent. As soon as I started to do that, my dog would lay down and take a nap. So while I was putting up the tent, while I was cooking my food and getting everything ready, my dog would sleep. And then I'd feed her and she'd eat, and then she'd go back and she'd sleep. She'd just take a nap. Or at least she would rest. But what's interesting is that as soon as I went to bed, so I would crawl into my tent, or sometimes I only used a tarp, so no walls, just a little plastic roof. I would crawl into my tent, and as soon as I laid down to sleep, my dog would wake up. And she would, so what was she doing? She was guarding, right? This is kind of a pack, like wolves or dogs, like a, pack instinct that, so when I was awake and moving around, she could rest and sleep because it was safe, right? No bears were going to come because I was going to be awake and ready. But when I went to sleep, she would be awake, and the rest of the night she would stay awake. I could hear her, like she'd be walking around the camp. She'd always be sniffing and, smelling stuff. A couple times she kind of growled. It would wake me up. I don't know, was there a bird? Was there a bear? Was there some other creature or animal out there that she heard or smelled? Nothing ever happened. but actually I slept well knowing that my dog was guarding me the whole night. So that was the pattern whenever we did that. In the morning then, we'd wake up, have a little breakfast. Then I would pack everything up, put it into the backpack. She would rest again during this time, sleep. And then we would do a full day of hiking, right? So it would be our first full day in the woods. And something magical would always happen to me. How do I explain it? The first night of sleeping alone in the woods, in the mountains, when I first would start to go to sleep, I would usually feel, not quite fear, but uncomfortable, a little nervous, some strange nervous feeling, right? All alone in the mountains. Something, it's just being used to being in a town or the cities, and there's always people around and walls around you, and then suddenly you're up in the mountains. No walls, just this little plastic tent, or no walls at all. And so the little uneasiness. But then as I was falling asleep, but then of course I would finally sort of drift off to sleep, go off to sleep. And then I would have this amazingly deep sleep. But then I would come out of it. So I would wake up a couple times during the night, usually, when camping. But in between, very, very, very deep sleep. And then, when I woke up the next morning, it's like I had been purified. Like my mind and body had been purified, cleansed, cleaned. And suddenly all the nervousness gone, any fear gone, worry gone. Like my head is kind of like similar to when you do meditation for a long time. Very clear-minded, this feeling of calm and peace. And from that point, after the first night and the first morning, I felt completely comfortable being in the woods by myself. So the next day, like I said, we'd pack up, and then we just go walking on the Appalachian Trail, deeper into the mountains. We'd walk all day, take breaks. Sometimes when we find a little rock to sit on, or wanted to get a snack, or just take a rest, or maybe needed to get more water, had a water filter, I would pump more water from a stream. And we just walked the whole day like that, going up to the tops of mountains, resting and seeing these amazing views of North Georgia, mountains in every direction. And then continuing on, dropping back down off the top of a mountain, going down kind of lower into the woods, and then walking a while, then back up again to the top of another mountain, up and down, up and down. Pretty difficult physically with a heavy backpack. And then I would find another ridge, another clear area. And the next night, set up my tent, set up the camp. My dog again would go to sleep while I was doing this. I would once again fix dinner. And I would do this. It depends, If I only had a little time, maybe only do 2 days. Sometimes I did 4 or 5 days. Usually 2 to 5 days, 2 to 4 days was probably my normal thing. Basically, it would be enough where I could bring all the food I needed. I wouldn't have to resupply again. That was my usual trip. So fairly short trips into the mountains. And I loved it. Absolutely loved the simplicity of it. Loved the quiet. Loved, just being in mountains and nature and the fresh, clean air and away from all the busyness and loudness and complication of city life and modern life. Wonderful. In fact, the more I want to go camping. As I talk about this, I realize, man, I need to do this again. The point is, about financial freedom is, I think those camping experiences gave me the confidence to try living in my car. Because I knew, I love camping. I can live in a tent. I love just being out there. I can live with just what I have on my back. Just enough in a backpack. And just a sleeping bag and a little pad to sleep on top of. That I know I can do that. I enjoy it. I love it. So I realized, I could do this how could I do this in a town or a city? I could just do it with a car. If I had a car, I'd be protected, right? Homeless people or crazy people couldn't bother me because I could lock the doors, and I'd wake up if they were trying to break into my car or something. Plus I had my dog always there too. So that was one fear I had, and I realized, hey, I wouldn't want to sleep on a sidewalk in a city because people bother you and stuff. But sleeping in a car, so I'd be safe enough. And I can just use my camping pad as my bed. I just get like a piece of wood to lay on top of. When I did it in the van, I had I had my winter sleeping bag for the winter when it got cold, and I just realized it's really not that different than camping. In fact, it's easier than camping because I'm in a town. I can go to the grocery store and buy food anytime. In the summer, I took my bath in the river. But when I did the full year in the van, I got a gym membership, 24-hour gym. So I would go work out, lift weights a little bit, and I just use the showers to clean. So anytime I needed a shower, or if I really had an emergency, I had to go to the bathroom, I could drive over to the gym and go. Usually I used coffee shops or public bathrooms. So I realized, this would be even easier than camping. I'm used to camping, so I can do this. And that gave me the confidence, the courage to live in the car and to live in the van. And I found my baseline, and now I realize, I don't need that much. And see, we get these messages all the time. from advertising, from the media, from, I don't know, parents, school, everywhere, that we need more. If you're important, you have a big, huge house and lots of stuff, and you got to keep buying more and more and all this complicated stuff, and we don't. And you got to test this for yourself. You got to find it yourself. You don't have to do it forever. You know, I don't live in my car now. As I said, I don't live in a tent now. But I think that if you focus on this and find your baseline, how simply can you live? It will give you so much power and confidence. And you will simplify your life. You'll never go back to being super complicated. And as I said also, I'm not saying go live in your car. I think for most people that's probably too low. But you could probably live in a smaller apartment, right? You could probably cut your rent quite a lot. You could cut your expenses. You could spend less in many different ways. And the reason this is important and I'm talking about it is it's so much easier for most people. Like I said, getting rich can be difficult. Making lots of money, you got to learn a lot about business and selling and sales. There's a lot of skills to learn to make a lot of money. But to cut your expenses, it's really pretty easy. It's simple and it's easy. You just have to do it. You don't need any kind of super skills. You don't have to learn much. You just do it. You just look at your expenses and you start cutting. And you think, okay, how could I make this cheaper? How could I make this cheaper? And you try to maybe move to a smaller place and you spend less money and you just keep going. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. It's simple and it's easy. So that's why I say focus on that first, because it is a powerful step towards financial freedom. It will give you financial confidence. You can just keep whatever job you have now, whatever work you have now, whatever income you have now. But if you go down to your baseline, you keep cutting your expenses and you find that baseline, you're going to suddenly find you have extra money. You've got extra money to save or invest or to use to start a side business or whatever you want to do. And we'll talk about what to do with your extra money and how you can start investing or building a side business or being a freelancer. We'll talk about more of that. That's coming. So, I am going to talk about getting rich and then making more money. And we're certainly going to learn that with Robert Kiyosaki's book and our current book club. But for me, I really want to emphasize and stress and focus on this, finding your baseline, because it's the key to personal power in your life, getting power over money. You being the master, not being a slave to money. You being the master of your life. Not being a slave to stuff, things. All right, that's my message for today. I have arrived at the coffee shop. Time for me to go work. I am at Namba Station. Hey, remember, follow me on Instagram now. I'm going to promote my Instagram because I just joined Instagram. I took a photo of the granny bike that I talked about in the walk and talk a couple days ago. And just now I took a photo of the umbrella holder. Remember I mentioned that the Japanese bikes, they have these holders that hold the umbrellas. Well, I found a bike that had that, and I took a picture of that. So what I'm going to do with Instagram sometimes is I'll take pictures of things that I talk about. So follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is Effortless English Club. There's a lot of fakes, a lot of people pretending to be me, but the real me is Effortless English Club on Instagram. And of course, go to effortlessenglishclub.com and join my VIP program, effortlessenglishclub.com. Lots of love to you. See you next time.